We're here tonight to hear a wonderful guest speaker, Jeff Parker, who's our CEO. He's agreed to be here. We thought this was perfect timing in that he was hired February of 2019. So as of this month, he will have been here 12 months. So it's perfect. He can take a look at the year behind us and give us some idea of where we're going in the year ahead. And I've asked him just to say a few things about him. We don't know much about this guy, right? So he's going to tell us about himself. So let's welcome our CEO, Jeff Parker.
All right, I'm not going to get too close to that since I'm already mic'd up here. So good evening, everybody. Thank you for the invite, number one. It's one of the goals for 2020 for your CEO, i.e. me, and my staff is to get out into the community more and engage and have more coffees, workshops, just communication overall. And so one of the things I wanted to mention was that we have at least a dozen planned programs that we're going to be sending out a calendar where myself and my staff, key staff, and probably some board members are going to be hosting get-togethers in the probably 9:30, 10 o'clock. We're going to use Clubhouse 1 a lot of the times because we got a nice space there so that you can come in and get information about special projects that are going on, information in general, what's going on in the village, and some plans in the future so we can communicate that way. And then one of the other things I want to mention, and I will talk about it a little bit later, is a new concept that we have for going to a hard copy breeze that we're going to unveil coming hopefully in February, March timeframe. We're working on the production of it right now. And I'm going to have Eileen Paulin, I'm going to have Eileen wave her hand back there. She's in the back. Eileen Paulin is our new Director of Media and Communications. So congratulations on that. Eileen's been with the organization for about a year and a half, 2 years now, and we have reorganized some of the departments in there. So Eileen's going to be over not just the communications that we do in our office, but also our TV channel. So she's going to be in charge of that, managing that overall. Paul will be the key person there, and TV's not leaving. But that coordination is going to be under Eileen's responsibility. We kind of shifted some of Chuck. If you know Chuck, he's going to take over a little bit more responsibility with regard to our resident services. So we had to relieve him of some duties and make it easier for him to make that transition. But so backwards now. Yes, it'll be a year in February, on February 4th. I remember that distinctly because it was the day before my birthday, and so I got to start and then have a birthday celebration right off the bat. But it's been a really, really good and interesting year for me. So to give you a little bit of background, I guess, on where I started and how I got here. Previously to coming to this position as CEO in the village, I spent 7 years as the city manager of the city of Tustin, just up the road here. I've been in local government profession pretty much all my life. Was city manager for over 25 years in 4 different communities in California, and in the profession for 35 years. It was a year ago, plus probably about a year and a half ago, a recruiter called me up and wanted to know if I wanted to look at a city manager job up in Northern California. And I said no. In fact, I'm thinking about retiring and off in the sunset because I wanted to look at a new adventure and I wanted to do some nonprofit work. And he goes, well, I just happened to be working on a CEO position for a nonprofit organization that's close to you. And I said, okay, well, we'll talk. Call me in a couple months, and after Brad left, he called me up and said, hey, we got this position in Laguna Woods, and would you be interested? And so I decided to apply and was lucky enough to be chosen, and at that point in time retired from local government and came over to the village. So It's been a very good transition for me. It's kind of enjoyed a new kind of governance structure. Local government has a lot of similarities in the sense of our operations are very much identical. In a lot of ways, we have maintenance and construction. We had maintenance construction. We have a bigger organization here than I did in Tustin as far as employee numbers. We do more direct impact to the people that especially live in United. I don't know how many of you live in United, but we are more involved with the plumbing and the electricity and those kind of activities, whereas in running a city, we didn't do those type of activities, but we had police and fire, more vigorous police and fire departments than we do here. But very similar in the structure, and the management structure is very much the same. The governance is totally different. And that's probably the biggest learning curve for myself, and still learning, by the way. And that is, we have, as you know, the mutuals, Third and United and GRF, and they all have boards. And then there's VMS board that I directly report to. So some people say, well, how many board of directors do you report to? And I say, on what day are you talking about? You know, it could either be 30. It's either 33 or it's add the 9, and you got 42 board of directors, as opposed to a city council of 5. So that's been a challenge and a learning curve. It's been the biggest challenge was I got here in February, and if all of you know this, I'm probably not repeating anything that you don't know, is one of the biggest elements of HOA management is to put together the annual budget. And when I got here in February, and boom, starting March, April, we started putting the budget together. And the budgetary process is totally different here and structured-wise than it is in local government. So pretty big, quick learning curve on that side of the equation, working with Betty Parker, not related, who is the Director of Finance, our CFO, and getting up to speed and working with the mutuals to understand what their needs are and what their responsibilities were. And they came out at totally different. Third had a concept which was a conservative concept, and wanted to focus on certain things. United came in with a number of their board members saying, what do you want, Jeff? What does your organization needs? What's your wish list? And those kind of things, along with our needs in our community. And so we ended up putting kind of two budgets together that were totally different. And when we first put the original draft together, I'm looking at the bottom line, and I said, wow. So I'm looking at Betty and looking at everybody, does $47 look like a big assessment increase? I'm not used to whether it's a dollar increase or $47, and they're going, geez, that's a lot, and I don't think anybody's going to be happy with that. And Third was kind of like a little bit lower, but Third came back to me and said, well, find a way to reduce and cut it down. United wanted to deliberate about that $47. And so it was an interesting process of where one of them said, Jeff, use your budgeting skills and pare it down, versus the other board wanting to have dialogue before they pared it down. And so that obviously created some consternations out there, but it also created an interesting dialogue. So we finally got that done in August. In the meantime, one of the things I like doing, what the board for VMS asked me to do, part of what I maybe brought from Tustin, is I've been very engaged in the last 3 cities that I've managed in building and establishing a different kind of culture within an organization, and how to use your managers appropriately, and how to create a succession plan within your organization, and developing a team concept. And what I found when I first got here was there were a lot what I call silos. Departments that weren't necessarily talking to departments very well. And fundamentally, I just have a real problem with that. And so I think the board understood that was occurring to some degree. And so, here's a person that's been doing it. Here's a person that knows how to kind of fix that. And so this last year's been a lot of that tinkering, dealing with the boards, telling them what I want to accomplish internally, and creating new structure. So as of last month, we created 3 new department head positions, move some people in some different directions. Philosophically, I'm like, get the right people on the bus and then put them in the right seat in the bus. And I think we had a lot of people that were good on the bus, but they weren't necessarily sitting in the right seat. And I think we've changed that. So now we're going to see this next year. So I'm looking forward to 2020, seeing if this quote-unquote experiment of Jeff's, in the sense of, are we going in the right direction? And that's really going to come back to, can we provide the service level that the community wants and the service level that the mutuals want to provide to the community, and in a reasonable and conservative price structure, so that we don't continue to see assessments going up, and up. A big challenge, not just because inflationary costs, but they're surprisingly, if you haven't heard, there's wants out there. We want this, we want this, we want that, and those wants cost money, or time and effort. And so our big challenge going forward is going to be devising a budgetary process that allows us to take a true look at what we want to do, what we want to accomplish, what the residents are telling the boards that they want, and how do we manage that within a reasonable budgetary process, so that we don't create an environment where people are having to leave because they can't afford to live here anymore. The good news on that side of the equation is that at least in the last 3 months, we have started to see an increase in homes being sold in the village. And so we're actually, for the year, I think we're going to exceed what we did in 2018. So, and with the trend continuing to go up, so that's really a positive thing for the village, for a couple of reasons. One, vacancies don't do us any good. And every time there's a sale of a property, that helps money go into the capital investment funds that we can use to build or repair facilities like this. And that's a big challenge coming forward to us. We have Clubhouse 3 that's being renovated. We're going to go out to bid and hopefully get that started by April or May. It's a $3 to $4.5 million project just to create and improve the safety condition of that facility. Not to make it necessarily like the Performing Arts Center that everybody would love to have. This is literally making sure the scaffolding doesn't fall, making sure that the air conditioning works, making sure that people don't trip and fall on hazards like this. Not that we won't look at that the other way on that, but it's these kind of things that have to be done in these kind of facilities to at least maintain the quality that we want to have out there, and they're not cheap. And then we have Clubhouse 1 down the road. People are very interested in seeing whether or not we can expand that or make that a better facility, and trying to balance out the costs and how we do that. So those are some of the big challenges. Looking backwards, I think that we have gotten to a place, and like I said, it took me a little while to do it, is trying to make sure that my staff have the people that they need to get things done. Or could we do it better? One of the big challenges that I had was in the area that probably heard the most complaints from the boards when I was getting interviewed. My first 2 weeks on the job, board members coming in and say, you got to fix this, you got to fix this. That kind of mentality, probably one of the number one, 2 things that I heard the most was landscaping. Got to fix landscaping. And the second one was got to fix resident services and how phone calls get lost and tickets get lost. So landscaping, we have a new manager there. Kurt Weimer's doing a fantastic job. He was one of the people I promoted to a director position this last month. Just doing a fantastic job of trying to do what we want, which is not only fix the landscaping, but also address in the future how we're going to do it more efficiently. One of the things that we do is, if you don't know, we have just thousands and thousands of trees in this community, which is a good thing. But if you don't prune them or you don't trim them, they become problematic. And that's what had occurred for a number of years. We got farther and farther behind. One of the things that I'm used to looking at in local government is when you're in that kind of situation is the question is how do you increase your volume but not have to expend more money? And the answer to that equation was we need to contract out some of this tree trimming. We were doing it all in-house, and our in-house staff was costing $200 a tree. I can contract out for $100 a tree. So if I had a budget of $500,000, I can do $1 million worth of work. Problem is I can't contract if the union won't let me. That's an interesting dialogue, and I have on the side. That's not the type of union contract I'm used to working under, but it's the one I have in my hand. So we sat down with the union and said, look, here's the logical thing. This doesn't make any sense. Am I going to just start laying off people because I can't do work? And I said, what if I move some of the tree trimmers into some vacancies that I have in landscaping to do other kind of mowing, whatever. And now I have vacancies in the tree trimming section. Can I then contract that out? My read of the contract was, yes, I can. Now I don't have people there empty, I can contract that. So we're starting to do that. Started to do that this, our first contract you'll start seeing West Coast Arbors as a company, you'll start seeing them in this next month. Contract was just let, so they'll be out there starting probably the beginning of February. We anticipate that we're going to be able to trim at minimum about 3,000 to 4,000 more trees than we did this last year for the same price. That's the best part. Same thing with slopes. You've probably seen a lot of slope maintenance going on. Same thing. We got all our individuals off of the slopes for two reasons. One, we weren't doing it as good as we could, and second, we had workers' comp claims. We had employees that were falling off the slopes and getting hurt, and then that don't work. That's a problem. So we decided the same thing. We sat down with the union and said, hey, we're going to move these people into a different kind of landscaping. We're going to contract that slope out. That contract just got let, and you're seeing some of it already out there, but for United, you'll see more slope maintenance coming up this next year if you live in United. Again, saving significant amount of money, also saving costs not only in the operation of doing it, but getting more done, but also health and safety of the employees, and not getting them in the areas where there's more risk of getting hurt. So I think that's a win-win for all of us. So the second big area I mentioned was resident services, the kind of front line when you have an issue or have a concern or have a work order that you want to create, you're calling resident services. We do just a phenomenal amount of calls into resident services, and I'm not one of these persons that memorizes everything, so I'm going to ask Eileen if she can remember this number. But we were looking at resident services, and I'm sitting there going, is this data right? And everybody's saying it is. Well, we answered over 400,000 resident calls this last year. 400, huh? That's emails, or it's any request that goes into resident services. I got a plumbing leak, I got this. 400,000. Now I'm going to tell you about a big bulk of them. It's real interesting that we need to deal with. I have on a busy day, say today, I got 5 people working in resident services. We're taking all those calls, trying to put up work order and get it done. So what happens? People are put on hold. People are, return calls. It doesn't work. The system's not working. And it didn't take that long to figure that out. The harder part is know how to fix it now. The concept behind the resident services was it was going to be the all-in, be-all call center. You call in for anything and everything, and it'll be this place where it starts and goes out. We have too many things that we're doing to make that effectively work. So your broadband's out today, so you call resident services. Your landscaping problem, you call resident services. And again, I only have these certain amount of people because I only have a certain amount of budget, and they're trying to call all that. And so all of a sudden, broadband calls get put on hold and don't get answered because what's more important? Well, your leaky roof, your leaky faucet, that's more important than broadband, unless you're watching TV at the time. And then it's not. And those are the challenges that we have. And so going back to the storytelling on this, of that 400,000, approximately 400,000 calls, over over 150,000 of them this last year are for you residents calling in and wanting your gate clearance for your friend who's coming to see you. That call was coming into resident services. It used to go straight to the gates. The thought was, well, ship it all to resident services and then they'll call back the gate and make it all efficient. So the idea behind that was that we had two people generally at a gate. One was taking the calls, one was opening the gates. And we went to the RFID. We can cut our costs down by reducing the ambassadors to one, because all the calls are going to resident services, until we found out that they're only handling about 25% to 30% of them. They're still going back to the gates. It costs differentiate, if the person in resident services is 25 bucks an hour and the gate ambassador is 15 bucks an hour, I'd rather have somebody at 15 bucks an hour answer than call from a cost perspective. So we got to look at this again, and it may be that we may go back to more ambassadors if we can find them and do it that way. It may be more efficient to do that, or we may go look at a different kind of call center just specifically for that kind of an operation and get it out of the resident services one so they can take care of, well, what I'll call maybe a little bit more critical ones in the sense of like plumbing and cable television and all those type of things. So those are the two big ones. I've given reports back to the board. We're changing a couple things up. So we think by, in resident services, new director, we believe that probably by, I've asked for it, by the end of April, we're going to have a comprehensive analysis done on what needs to change so that we can do, we can answer phone calls in an order that I think is appropriate, that we don't keep people on hold. We also are trying to get, this is one that we did implement, so, and I don't know how many of you have called resident services, but I assume all of you almost. So let's say you had a plumbing leak or have a plumbing issue and you called resident services. In the past, they would take your information down and then they send it through a scheduling process. And that plumber would then get scheduled to come out to your house and work on your unit or your house. You, the person that called, were not informed of that process until that scheduling occurred. Well, that scheduling could occur anywhere between 24 hours or 3 or 4 days. So in that 3 or 4 days, what are you doing? You're wondering what the heck is going on. I'm saying heck, I could use another word, but and so now when you call resident service and you say you have a plumbing issue, you're getting an email immediately saying, we got your call, we're scheduling it, you will hear within 24 hours what that scheduling is, and then we can track it better that way. And I think what that's going to do, believe it or not, is one of the things we haven't got it pinned down, but out of those 400,000 calls, we have a lot of calls that are just calling back because they haven't heard. Or they're mad, or they're, whatever. And it's a combination of those. So if I can keep those, if I can get you that answer right away, this is what we're doing, this is when it's going to happen, maybe I'll cut down on some of those calls. That just frees up more time for doing something else that I think is more appropriate. Those are the little nuances that we're working on in two of the biggest areas. And I'll stop in a minute here and answer. I think the other one that you probably know, and I mentioned it earlier and kind of joking, the governance structure of the village is really unique because United has their rules, Third has their rules, GRF has their rules, and VMS has our own bylaws. But the reality is if United is going left, Third's going right, and GRF is going up and down, it's very difficult to be cohesive. And we have one body called VMS that's managing all this. So if Third says that they want the grass cut this way and United cut that way, I only got one set of mowers out there, so it's like going, doing this kind of thing. That's not very good management. So the one thing that I really pushed and asked from the boards this last year is to start thinking about where we can work on cohesive objectives next year. What do we want to call it? What do we want to get done that we're all on the same page on? Because that's going to make my job a lot easier. we can't continue to do this up and down. It's costly to do it that way. I think there's buy-in to that. I think they're starting to hear that. But there clearly are differences, and there are differences within the boards. Trust me. That in and of itself is an interesting game to watch sometimes. But I guess I'm used to that. I would say, like I said, 25 years of being a city manager, I've seen, at least I used to say, I've seen everything as far as politics and management. I was very fortunate the last 7 years in Tustin, or last 6 years in Tustin. My first year in Tustin was kind of unique, to have worked for a council that was very united in one-way thinking and very united in their concepts, and we got a lot done because of that. And I think that's the positive side that I want to bring to the village and my management, is that we can get a lot done and we can make some really good improvements, but we got to be cohesive about doing it, and we got to want to do it. That's the story I'm going to keep telling, and that's the story I'm going to keep pushing, and we're going to see how that works out. But I've loved the experience so far. I love my team. I got a great team, and so we're going to keep doing it. And part of it is letting you know more than what you've known in the past, which is communicating with you guys as residents. And that's one, Eileen knows that she's the master of the calendar coming up that we're putting together. And if you don't mind, I'm going to have her come up real quick. I'll put her on the spot and just make a little brief announcement about our new venture that we just signed our legal contract to. Today. And this is a concept, by the way. I'll let her explain it. But this is a concept in which Eileen came to me after I got here and said, "Hey, we think this would work, and we think this was a good idea because we want to reach everybody, and we don't reach everybody right now." She'll mention that how many people have the internet and how many people don't. So I'll let you talk there, because I'll stand away and turn off.
Voice, I probably could do it.
I'll turn my mic off for a second.
Sorry, I've got that sinus thing that everybody seems to be getting. Hi, didn't expect to be up here, so we'll wing it. Well, what Jeff's talking about is, so does it really matter to you? No, but I've been in the communications business for a long time, and this has been really a fun opportunity. I kind of thought I was done. I had closed down a book publishing business that I'd had and was kind of concentrating on aging parents and those kinds of things. Anyway, the phone call came in, and I didn't even tell my husband I was coming in to talk to anybody. And the next day I got an offer, and I said, "I guess I have to talk to you about something." Anyway, that was about 24 months ago. And so he says it keeps me, out of the bars. Anyway, one of the things that I enjoy very much about what I do is analyzing an audience and trying to figure out, who are we talking to? So it took, as with Jeff, it takes a little while to get your feet on the ground, especially because I will be the first to not be shy in saying there's days this is a crazy place, because we have all types and sizes and shapes of people and personalities, and some days it's great, and other days you want to go jump in a hole and hide. But anyway, for the most part, it's good. So the analysis, when I arrived, there was starting to be a lot of heavy emphasis on email, which makes sense. And we needed to tighten a lot of things up. The list that we had was pretty loose. So we spent a great deal of time tightening it up, making sure we're going to real people. We're taking care of the bounces and the dupes and those types of things. So we have a really good, solid list, and it hits about 2/3 of the village. But that doesn't mean everybody's opening what we're sending them. It means they're receiving it. And with the program that we work with, we can actually, if I really wanted to, I could, like, when's the last time Steve Carman opened the Village Breeze? I can actually go and look at that. I don't have time to look at that for 18,800 people, but I can. So after having done kind of an analysis and then starting to put together the fact that you all know that you have internet when you move in here. Well, we have close to 3,000 residences that are not hooked up. They can have it, but they're not hooked up. So I was not a math major, but I start kind of doing the simple math, and I realized, that's who we're not reaching. I mean, obviously I know that theoretically, but if you do the numbers, it's like balancing your checkbook. It's like, that's it. That's what we're missing. And, it's over 6,000 people, and that's a pretty significant, it's 1/3 of the village. So I came up with this, I knew that I needed to go back to my roots. And I have many colleagues that think the funniest thing they've ever heard is that somebody would want to start a print magazine in this day and age. But I felt that this community is perfect for it because we throw so much information at you all the time. It's countless the amount of flyers that come out of our office. I mean, it's endless. Every time somebody, a new class or a new dinner or whatever, we do a recreation calendar, we do a transportation newsletter, we do a security newsletter, we do a social services newsletter, and I would venture to guess that not everybody sees all those on a regular basis. So I ran the numbers, made some contacts in the industry, and one of the beauties of the modern day we live in is printing's become a lot less expensive than it used to be. So I got this slimmed down, and we're very blessed that on the team that we have a couple of other magazine veterans that, had a background in that. So people are, how are you going to do this? I'm like, are you kidding? If there's anything we can do in our sleep, it's this. So the next problem was, how do we do that and not raise assessments? How do we do that? So I'm very, open about this. An opportunity came across, and I kind of feel it was divine intervention maybe, that Memorial Care, Saddleback was purchased by Memorial Care recently, and they've got a nice large budget, and they feel very strongly about the relationship with the village, because the village built that hospital. If it weren't for the GRF Foundation, there would not be a Saddleback. And their marketing team is really basically being commissioned with, you better get back in front of those people and remind them of the roots of where we came from. Well, that came with a budget. So I just sort of threw out thinking, oh, yeah, right. What would you think about being a single sponsor of this publication so we could get it out the door? And they never balked. So it took us, maybe 9 months to finally get everybody on the same page. But they are basically covering the hard cost for us to get it out. And what we're giving them in exchange is we're not going to run any competitive advertising for the first 3 years that we're doing this. Others is fine, but wouldn't it be great if it's a profit center? I would love it. I'd love to stand in front of you in 2 years and say, hey, we took your assessments down $2 per man or per month because we're making money on the magazine. But the point is getting all of the information that you need to have a happy, fun life here every 60 days. So at this point, it'll be my monthly, and you'll be seeing the first issue. Like Jeff, you don't want to say, because then, oh my God, the baby was overdue. But we're hoping to have you'll have the first issue by March, the beginning of March, the first week of March. Hopefully you'll have it sooner. And it's only the first issue. It's not going to be perfect. It's basically been Elise Rothrock and myself putting the whole thing together. But I felt like if we had to get it out, because it's like most things, you have nothing to talk about unless you have something to look at. So your Media and Communications Committee is our editorial advisory board. It's information only. We are not going to get into the muckraking. We just can't. That's not what we're there for. Our goal is to give you as much information as you need. So you'll have all the new bus routes will be in this one. We did a brand new village map. And this time it doesn't have all the little tiny engineering drawings on it that would make you give it to your friend and they never find your manor. So it's a pull out in the middle. So it's a very, easy thing. All the phone numbers for everything you need, all of the tips you need from security, and then there will be some feature stories, but obviously informational. And it's also going to give our social service department a great foundation to get the word out on all the big things that they do. So that's what we're doing. And pardon me, it'll be distributed by U.S. Mail. It's a program called Every Door Direct. Now, I will tell you, I have a fear, so you can all help me on this. I'm very aware of the fact that occasionally the mail people are a little lazy. So rather than sticking something into every mailbox, they drop them, especially if you live in a garden villa, they drop them in that bin there. So one of our big jobs is going to be getting the word out. It's not a throwaway. This is not a pay-to-play. We all get those things, California Closets. Isn't that funny? They had a 3-page feature. Well, it's because they bought an ad. This is not what this is. This is village information. There will be a section for each mutual that will be updating you on what they're doing. This first issue is Boards 101. Who's on your board? What's their job? What are the committees? What do they do? When do they meet? We're trying to kind of keep a guide so people know where to go to talk to about what. But anyway, that's how it will arrive. And then we'll have extra issues all over. In clubhouses, they'll be in the buses, if you lose it, we'll have another one for you. So anyway, that's what we're doing. I was going to give a number, which just blew me away. As of last Wednesday, so we got back here, the 2nd of January, I guess? 1,375 people had walked through resident services. So just to give you a feeling of the volume, because I just think it's very easy to not realize the volume. That's a lot of people in 2 weeks, anyway.
Will there be a digital version?
Yes, it'll be online digitally, and one of the benefits of the digital version is all the links will be live. So you could just go, because we'll post a lot of things, so yes, it will be digital. But obviously haven't figured out how to do that in a print publication yet, but anyway, so. Yeah, exactly. But yes, and my hope is kind of people might enjoy reading the print copy, but then they could, if they do want to get to things quickly, you can just go on and get the digital version, so. Anyway, so hopefully, it's called the Village Breeze. We didn't get creative because you'd already branded that. You already knew what it was.
The print links could be shown as underlining.
So what she didn't say is not cheap to do this thing. We, Memorial stepped up to the plate, and the reason it took a little while is we had to have a few meetings with them to show them the light. and so we hope that, and there's a potential of getting a little bit more advertisement. We're not focusing on that. That's not the key, but this magazine is not cheap. It's going to be over $150,000 to print, staff, and mail to everybody out there. So it's a big contribution by Saddleback. 150,000 a year, and they've committed to 3 years.
That's without staff time.
Yeah,
There's no staff
yeah.
charge.
Well, I mean, it's
And that's
involved.
6 issues.
I'm sorry.
6 issues.
Say it again.
6 issues.
6 issues. Every other month. Yeah. Yeah. So it's I'm very proud of that we're doing it. I kudos to Eileen for the concept and it actually was really fun to get involved with I guess in the negotiations. I like doing that kind of stuff and we sat down and the two of us pushed and shoved, and she did yeoman's work and heavy work with regards to getting Memorial to see the positive. They're not only doing that though, and I want to give them kudos, is that as you know, we got a new transportation program going up, and one of the buses, one of the routes that we're going to have is the special buses that are going to take people over to the medical offices over in and around the hospital, not just to the hospital. And they are looking actually at sponsoring in the bus, which will help our costs associated with that. So that's creative thinking. That's out-of-the-box thinking. I think that it's not something that the village has necessarily done in the past. We're going to do more of that all the time. Because if you don't have to pay for it, and I don't have to pay for it, and I can produce it, that's a good thing. I'm going to stop. I probably have said more than you wanted to hear to begin with. And we'll do a Q&A if you, however you want to do it. And here she comes. And by the way, you go ahead, don't be afraid of talking loud, because Joan knows this. So my own personal thing, I will backtrack one, Joan, before you start. Personally, I'm not married. Somebody asked that question. I do have a significant other. I live in Newport Beach. I have a 28-year-old daughter that is my star. And she is in different corporate business, which is interesting. And I, 10 years, let's see now, giving my age away, 13 years ago, I like to exercise. I like to ride mountain bikes, do golf, everything. I'm one of those kind of very active person. I used to play sports when I was younger. And about 13 years ago, I started to notice that I was having a little bit of hearing problems. And, well, so I joined a good group here, by the way. There are some people that have hearing problems, and it's an interesting thing to talk about. And then I started having a severe vertigo. And if you've ever had severe vertigo, you don't want to have severe vertigo. And I was out mountain biking one day and stopped and thought I would take a little break, and I'm a long ways from anywhere and had a major episode of vertigo. Luckily, the person that was riding with me at the time was able to ride about 5 miles and get help. We didn't have our cell phones with us at the time. retrospect, you think about that. Ultimately went ENT, ultimately found out I had a brain tumor. And in order to fix that brain tumor and get that brain tumor, luckily non-malignant brain tumor, they had to sever my balance nerve and eliminate all the hearing on my left side. So when I stand this way, there's a reason. A tumor was taken out, luckily, perfectly well done. One of the scary parts of that is the people that have this type of tumor oftentimes have very, very major Bell's palsy type paralysis in their face. It's called not a clostridium, it's called, I forget the name of it. Anyhow, acoustic neuroma. And luckily I didn't have a lot of that, but the balance nerve took me about a month and a half to walk again. At least walk straight. I'm not sure I walk straight still. But it changed my life in the sense of what was priorities too. You go, okay, the kid's a priority, life's a priority, work. But it gave me a new thought about how I want to do things and stuff like that. So when you talk, don't be afraid to be loud, because sometimes I'll sit there and go, what? That's one of these things. So.
Okay, you didn't have to mention, what did I say? Oh,
Go ahead. Come on,
going live, what's the, sign-in thing?
Dwelling life.
Dwelling live as a possibility of relieving the calls.
The reality is we thought that dwelling live would be a great thing to have, because that's how people can call in and electronically do it. People aren't using it.
It's still complicated for me.
Well, and that's part of the answer. So we're looking at that. There is a new version. It's computer software. There's a new computer software version that's supposed to be out in March or April. We're going to take a look at that. If it doesn't work, we got to go kick it out and find something else that works better, or go to a different system altogether. But dwelling live as it's working right now isn't sufficient to meet our needs. And we got to.
And
We'll change it if we have to.
the other thing was Arbor Pro,
That's working.
and you just didn't mention how its scheduling is so great.
No, the Arbor Pro has been one of the big pluses for our landscape and getting that kind of work. So I appreciate that.
You wrote in one of your articles that you have an open door policy. What does that mean? Can you explain that? How do we do that?
Sure. I hope what it means is, so who has or hasn't been over to our offices? One of the things that for a couple of different reasons before I got there, actually put in place the week I got there, is in order to go up to the corporate offices that are on the second floor where we're located, you have to get approved to go up by going to the front and getting a visitor's pass, or if you're a board member, obviously you have the ability to get up there. That was done because of some security issues that we had, some safety issues for our employees, and some interaction with our employees that were inappropriate by not only residents, but in some cases former and past board members. So that was really kind of a safety and workload and protection type of thing. But if you want to, and I brought some tonight, I got business cards. If you need to meet with me or want to meet with me, you call up Catherine, who's my executive assistant, you make an appointment and you come see me. Easy as that. Yeah. Well, if you just walk in, but the phone call to make the appointment can come into Catherine.
Jeff, this is a tech group of people. We're Video Club. A couple of years ago, I was talking to Brad, the former CEO, and one of the big problems we were having is we're self-cable, we have our own internet and all that stuff. And the streaming has been a problem because of the workload. There's not enough bandwidth because a lot of people have the old analog TVs, and it was taking up a lot of space. We have the ability, but not the space. And so he was even talking about replacing all the old TVs that in these homes with the new smart digital. And he was going to try and instigate a trade-in program and stuff like that. I just wonder what the future of the dish and our internet and cable is here, and how are you addressing that problem?
Great question. To begin with, on our head end, which is over across the street there, we just recently had, these are pieces of equipment that are about 15 years old, and this is where the internet's coming in, the first place that comes into before it goes distributes out at the nodes and everything. Those pieces of equipment we started to see fail in August, and we were working with West Coast with the internet company that we have, and everybody's like, okay, how long is this thing gonna last? What happens when it doesn't last? I said, Chuck and I were just kidding. I always said, well, it'll fail on Super Bowl Sunday, of course. Because that's when, and then I recall. Well, it didn't. It didn't wait that long. We had a failure about a month ago, and we had a second failure. And luckily, we were able to fix it with Band-Aids and tape, duct tape and everything. We just went to the GRF board for an emergency $375,000 expenditure to get that equipment fixed. This new fix of equipment will also expand our bandwidth capabilities, so that'll help. And then coming to the GRF subcommittee next week, 2 weeks, we are also asking GRF to look at doing hiring a consultant, outside consultant expert in the area of cable television, internet, the whole thing, and saying, is this the best system? Is there better systems? Is there cheaper systems? Give us a global look, because if you don't know, a number of years ago, they thought about selling the system, got bids, didn't do it, all those kind of things. I'm not wed to anything. I think you need to evaluate it. We have an interesting setup with regards to how revenue flows in and pays for programming. Some of the money comes from the internet, so we take that internet revenue and help cover the cost of programming. So the reason your cable rates are low is the internet subsidizing it, for lack of a better word. Okay, well, I'll be a Houdini. I'm saying 10, 15 years, you're not going to be watching cable television as it is today. You may be streaming everything by then. So if that's the case, then I want to own the internet. I don't care about cable. So we got to think about that. How far do we go along before we say, hey, anybody want to buy this piece of junk? Or old, antiquated, whatever you want to call it. Or is it something that we want to recreate somehow? The greatest thing about our system is we own all the conduit and we all own all of the wiring, in a sense, going to the house. So however we market that, that's a tool that we have that nobody else has. Clearly, the homeowners associations out there don't have that. So we're taking a look at that. So the proposal for the consultant goes to committee, and then it'll go to GRF the first meeting in February. So we need to kick this thing off because, one, getting the piece of equipment fixed is key, and that gives us some time. But time is of the essence. You can't wait too many years down the road before you make a decision on, hey, let's upgrade this, let's enhance that, buy more capacity. We're going to have to do that.
The report will be done February?
No, the consultant report is going to get kicked off. It'll be approved if we're going to use the consultant.
Oh.
It'll probably take the consultant about 6 months to complete the report. So I'm hoping to have something back in May, June.
Could you tell us what are the rumors and the unrumors that we're hearing about Clubhouse One?
Okay, hopefully they're not, I'll say they're not rumors anymore then. So Clubhouse One, we were in the midst last year of trying to determine what is the need for Clubhouse One. So we did hired an architectural firm to go out and tell us, is it going to fall down tomorrow? Is it able to last a few years? Does it need duct tape? Does it need a redesign? Does it need to be imploded and start all over? And there's 3 phases to that report. It's about a 120-page report. It's not actually finished yet, because when I got the report, I read it, and I said, I have 2 questions, and you need to do more analysis to give me those answers. So that consultant is doing that, and should have that back by the end of the month. By February, a new ad hoc committee has been formed to look at Clubhouse One by GRF. They just did that at their last meeting, last MNC meeting. And so that committee is going to take this report and start looking at it. And there's 3 elements of it, and I kind of set them. There's fix it, make sure it's not going to fall down, like a new air conditioner and those kind of things. And then just keep using it the way you're using it and see how long that can last. And when it starts to fall apart, put money into it as needed and as you go. For those around Clubhouse 2, ring a bell. The idea was, didn't want to go tear it down, didn't want to do a whole thing, let's fix it as it, and $5 million became $10 million. Huh?
It went from 4 to 7.
Yeah, and so that's very, you gotta be careful about that. Right, yeah. And so I'm real leery about those kind of concepts. The second one is to take part of Clubhouse One and tear it down. That's primarily where the area is, in the shuffleboard area, that back part, and restructure a new building there to have more capacity, but leave everything else basically the same and just keep it maintained. And so you got one number and another number. And then the third option is, what if we just took it down to the ground and built a new Clubhouse One based on today's needs, today's desires, and what would that cost and how would you fund it?
What about the gym and the fitness center?
That would all be incorporated in the new concept. So that new concept is being, those 3 ideas are going to be looked at. My guess is that task force is going to take 2 or 3 months to weed through all that information, and then they would make a final recommendation to the GRF board. At the same time, what I've been charged with and working with the board is, okay, let's assume you choose option 3, which is the most probably, well, 2 and 3 are going to be real close, but let's assume that's a number that's pretty big. How are you going to fund that? Where are you going to find the money for that? Right now, over the next 10 years, there's probably about $10 million that's been set aside for Clubhouse One. That's not going to cut full-blown expenditures, so where do you get the change? Yes, sir. Or we're going 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good presentations. Going back to tree trimming, along some areas, probably most of the village, but along where I live in between Gate 9 and then up to Clubhouse 5, the wall along the wilderness area, there's some areas where the trees are overlapping here and there from the wilderness area to the landscaping, the trees,
Okay.
which make for a pretty nasty hazard mitigation issue. And having done some of that, after the Northridge earthquake, they needed a lot of help in LA. Put it that way, a lot of help. And I went from helping inspections there to hazard mitigation and all kinds of levels up to working with Lucy Jones. The question is, how often will they be trimming trees, especially those that have hazard mitigation issues and dangerous fire conditions for the next fire season?
In the new tree trimming program, we have a new cycle that is, don't quote me on this, but I want to say, because I know we're working on it, would be a 5-year cycle with all of the trees within the village. But we're not going on a typical rotational cycle. We've also, when we just did this with GRF, we just got their approval to do a species element because certain trees need to be trimmed every year. Some trees don't need to be trimmed for 5 years, and you need for that in your whole thing. So I would suspect that because of our species analysis, we'll be able to identify those trees that have to be trimmed now or are dangerous in that sense. We're also working, this last year was a big deal for us in a negative way, and negative for all of the village, is that our insurance rates went way up this last year. And the reason they went up was because our liability insurance for fire went way up. And the reason they went up was because of Paradise in Northern California. You are next to a wilderness area, and you are in a high fire zone. And insurance, we used to have one insurance company that covered our whole entire insurance, and they went away. They said, we're not covering you anymore. And so we had a $100 million policy, and they said, we'll cover you for the first 20. You got it, first 20. And we got to go find the other 80. Well, we did. It took us a little while, but the rates went up because of that too. And now we have, instead of one company, we have 25 different companies. They're all strated in there. That's not the way to do business, but that's how we had to do business because you need to be covered, obviously, and the village needs to cover. But one of the issues, and one of the things that we're trying to work on with Orange County Fire Authority, with Laguna Beach, with all of our neighbors is, how do we address the wilderness area so that it reduces the potential impact to us? I made contact with a couple of people. I think Laguna Beach did a great thing. They brought in goats. I don't know if you ever saw that story. If you also read the Ronald Reagan fire by the Ronald Reagan Museum in Simi Valley, the part of that museum was saved, part of the whole thing was saved because they had to use goats within 2 weeks of that fire to cut down all the brush. Very, very logical, we need to look at that on the edge to address that kind of question. Yes?
I have been primarily concerned since we moved to Laguna Woods, that Laguna Woods be a nurturing community. And I'm very concerned about the fact that right now there's a disciplinary procedure in place that allows VMS to be the complainant, the investigator, the prosecutor, and the judge of people, and as a result of which 2 people in the past couple of years, tremendously valuable volunteers, have essentially been blackballed from this community. One of them, Steve Leonard, for example, actually was blackballed before he had a chance to even know he was being charged. I have proposed to GRF and have complained to GRF and to Third Board that what they should do is to institute a task force to separate these functions so that we are a nurturing community, not a police state. And I'm wondering what your position is. Would you be in favor of organizing or backing a task force to actually reorient and redefine our disciplinary procedures? I have volunteered to participate in it, if so.
Everybody got that. So after a couple of situations that we've had, I'm not going to mention names, but after a couple of situations that you just referenced occurred, the presidents of the mutuals asked, we had a meeting about what would be the appropriate process to put into policy with regards to how you would have I'll use it, harassment as the name, harassment investigation done, what would be the procedures, process for that moving forward through, and with final decisions being made. They have directed myself to engage the 4 attorneys, the 3 attorneys for each of the mutuals and the attorney for VMS. It's going to have multiple functions because we have, believe it or not, harassment between residents and residents. And we've had harassment between employees and residents, and we've had harassments between members or residents and employees. Now, from my perspective, although I think it's important for the village, I'm going to tell you my perspective is my number 1 priority is my employees. When it comes to harassing employees, because I'm legally obligated under state law to protect those employees in a harassment environment. I'm legally, if I do not take action, I can be personally sued. So when that happens, I have to take action to protect that employee. Well, that means you can't come up on the 2nd floor, then you can't come up on the 2nd floor. Now, The other ones are, which I think you're referring to, a couple of the other ones have to have a process. And one of the things that we suggested, because it came up, was whether or not the process was, and you mentioned it, was whether or not that process was fair in the sense that we hand it over to security, and security does the investigation. Well, if there's an employee involved, some people could look at that as the fox in the hen house. How can security employee investigate employeeville? We've suggested that we'll do independent investigator and not have security do that kind of investigation. If it's an employee to employee, we'll probably still use security. So we are looking at those kind of items. I would suspect that you'll have more information come out within the next, well, none of the boards work super fast. Well, I'll say next month and a half, probably, knowing where we're at. The attorneys met last week, and so they're trying to put something together, and then they're really disseminated out.
Okay. I'm curious, when someone purchases a home here, they pay $5,000 above the purchase. Where does that money go?
Goes into what we call capital reserve, and that is the money that I'm referencing that is going to pay for the upgrade of a facility like this or Clubhouse One or any of our major facilities. It also, and it can only be used for upgrading of facilities. We also have a reserve that comes out of your assessments, not that goes into the use. We use it to buy equipment or vehicles or something. So they are separated. That one can only be used to upgrade the facilities in the GRF.
But it was originally reserved for the reserve
Right,
only, not
right.
for upgrade.
Right.
They have changed that.
Yes. And it went from 2,500 to 5,000.
And may I ask about our security?
Question?
May I ask about the security? We know Tim Moy is leaving, but he also cut a lot of security guys. There's a lot of empty vehicles sitting, and the supervisor has to do a lot of work around. How are you handling the future security?
We have just filled, I think, 3 positions in the last 2 weeks. And I think we have, off the top of my head, Tim and I just talked about, I think we have 3 other positions that are in the interview process. Yep. We need to get police staff.
I have a question concerning the fire area. You just mentioned security. We'll have a new security director coming up when he's hired, and the current gentleman is leaving. Is your job responsibility to review activities in that department and could make suggestions for things they should be doing?
Yes, I am the person, and if you have some suggestions, I can give you my business card and you can.
Okay, well, the suggestion I have is that security people are here, there, and everywhere. And that we all know about the major fires in Northern California. I'm suggesting that the security people, when they are out and about, that they report areas, like for example, at Via Vista and Alta Vista intersection, there's a whole side of a hill with nothing but dead plants. And so they should report things like that they see just driving all around to the landscaping people to get them removed ASAP.
I appreciate that, and we'll take that one into consideration and get working on it, make sure that Kurt knows that in landscaping. And it may be under schedule already, I don't know that. But that's a good point. See something, say something.
I don't really need the microphone.
Yeah, no, talk.
I have a question concerning the billiard club. In the last year, we lost, behind gate 5, 4 pool tables. And then later on, 2 weeks later, we lost 5 tables, altogether 9 tables, leaving us with only behind gate 1 pool tables. At Clubhouse 3, you have 6 tables. At Clubhouse 1, you have 4 tables. Now, we're talking about remodeling or redoing or rebuilding Clubhouse 1. Does that take into account? Okay, right now, also Clubhouse 3 is going to be closed down, the pool room. They're going to be rebuilding it. Now that leaves us in a tremendous overload on 4 standard pool tables left at Clubhouse 1. And here we're talking about rebuilding Clubhouse 1.
Well, that won't
Now,
happen
they've
for a
been
while.
trying, basically not you in person, but they've been trying to take away Clubhouse 3 pool rooms for as long as I've lived here, which is 16 years. And now again, I mean, what is going to happen to the billiard club? We do not have enough tables now.
Okay.
And we also have them concentrated only by gate 1, and for some reason closed both of them at gate 5.
That's a great question. I don't have an answer for you, but I'll look into it and get you an answer.
Have you ever attended the GRFCAC committee meeting, sir? I don't know if you can hear me.
I'm sorry.
Have you ever attended the GRFCAC committee meeting?
Tell us what
Have I ever?
It's your
Yes.
community activities committee, and have you spoken with them about that?
I have only attended those activity meetings, and only a few of them when there was going to be a billiard club a reference to the billiard club.
I'm just saying, because this is a very good recommendation to everybody for different committees. I would strongly recommend that you go to the next meeting and you get up, if you've ever been to a meeting before, you fill out a card and you have 3 minutes to address the committee about a concern. And I would suggest that those people are the ones that really need to hear it, because they need to be aware of what you're feeling.
Well, there was an earlier question about the gym, and clearly, you mentioned, well, it's gonna be
It's gone too,
rebuilt.
right.
Now, the thing is, you didn't say that about the billiard club, that if we rebuild Clubhouse, if you rebuild Clubhouse 1, you're gonna rebuild the billiard room.
I have no idea what we're going to do actually, because I think the most important thing, if you did go the direction of rebuilding Clubhouse 1, you need to go out and find out from your residents what is it that they want, and what is it that they
We
need.
lost 50% of our tables, they weren't
You lost them, they moved them or they stole them? They moved them.
No, they did not move them. We lost them, and they're gone.
I understand. I'll look into it and I'll get you an answer. I can't answer it honestly, so I'll look into it.
Any more questions?
Yeah, I just have one.
Okay.
About the CAC committee, I have heard, maybe you can give me a better definition of CAC, but I have heard that one goes to that committee, one makes a suggestion or a complaint, and it goes nowhere. And it goes around and around and around, and that's what I've heard. That's why I'm asking for clarification.
What I would recommend in that case is if you feel that, you go and nothing happens, I would contact the chairperson of that committee.
It's a very, very active committee. They do terrific stuff.
People don't realize, we do what parents tell us to do. So because we take a lot of heat, oh, you this, you that. You're like, well, you better talk to the people that are representing you then. And that's why it's like, we can hear that, and I will certainly bring this up tomorrow in recreation and see what I can find out. But I assure you that hearing it resident to resident to your board is important, and you don't get a response, like contact the
You got any cards on you? Jeff?
I do. I have cards.
I'm right next door.
I'm a member of
Can I
the
Sure.
get one?
GRFCAC as an advisor, and we're very active in the, so.
Thank you.
But does
But
it go
nothing
anywhere
happens.
beyond that?
That's not true. It does happen. It does happen.
Well, let's give Jeff a big hand, and thank you for, this is always, when you start to get into open questions, you can go in all kinds of directions, and I think you did very well tonight. I thank you for your time. And I think from,
I'll get invited back.
I think I'm standing in just the wrong place for echo here. Anyway, I just want to say thank you all for coming, and we look forward to, what are you telling me? Move this way? All right. Jeff, I do have a gift for you, and it's something that you'd be.
What do you want? I can leave the business cards back in the back, if that works.
Yeah, we'll put them on the table there. Marcia, give them to Marcia, and she'll put them out there. Thank you, Jeff. Want to give you a video club mug so that you have one of the rare mugs there. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it. Now, before you leave, if you haven't already made your reservation for the February 1 banquet, good time to do it. And then we'll have your preference for the meals and such. So.
Come back to the open house in March.
And the open house, yeah, March is going to be a fun, revealing a premiere of a new video, and we're going to have our open house, which is always very popular. So you'll hear more from us in the weeks ahead. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you.